obviously, we're doing Jesus restored the ear of the high priest's servant from Luke 22 to 50 to 51. This was the last miracle that Jesus performed before he hung on the cross. Of course, the resurrection was somewhat miraculous. That was a biggie. We'll end the year on that one in a couple weeks here. But all four Gospels record the servant's ear being cut off, but only Luke records the miracle of healing. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's brief and powerful. Let's read that together. And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus answered and said, "Permit even this." And he touched his ear and healed him. Or at least he touched where his ear was and healed him. Now, just to give you a little backdrop, earlier Jesus had asked the disciples if, when he had sent them out with nothing, had they lacked anything. Their answer was, what would their answer be? Had they lacked anything even though he sent them out with nothing? No, right? They said, no, nothing. He was faithful to them. And in verse 28, it says that they had been faithful to him and continued with him. So they had this really tight relationship, right? They trusted him and his provision. They had learned how to depend on God's provision when he sent them out with no money, no knapsack, no sandals. He just said, just go. So that's the first lesson that we learned from this account. We need to learn to depend on God's supply when he sends us out, trusting his provision as we work for him and in him. Okay? When he sends us out to work, he's going to provide for us. We don't have to be worried that, we're going to be out there buck naked or whatever that expression is. We've had some debate on that. What's the real expression? Does anybody know? Is it butt naked or buck naked? Come on, have some fun here. Huh?
Not TT, but single T.
Okay, but could it be TT? Oh, there we go. Well, anyways, he's not going to leave you out there stranded. That's not in my notes. Not at all.
It was free?
It was free, yeah. Whoa. So then Jesus presented the disciples with a change that was coming into their lives. Let's read that together, verses 36 and 37 of chapter 22. Then he said to them, "But now he who has a money bag, let him take it, and likewise a knapsack. And he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. For I say to you that this which is written must still be accomplished in me." And he was numbered with the transgressors. For the things concerning me have an end. All right, so whereas the disciples beforehand didn't need to take anything, now they did. Life was going to be different for them. And that's the second lesson we have to learn. That's how it is in life with Christ. We have to listen to Jesus because situations change. Just when you think you got him all figured out and this is the path that he has for you, he switches it up. I remember when Pastor Mark resigned from the church we were at, and then that was quickly followed up from resigning from the synod that we loved. We were devastated. We had no clue what we were going to do. That was quickly followed with a sense of expectation as we walked out this unknown future, knowing, obviously, the one who does know, who knew the future for us. But with 4 children, a mortgage, and me, I had just started homeschooling all the girls. Pastor Mark was suddenly no job, no pension, no medical insurance, no nothing. So we were like, oh, and he only knew how to do one thing, pastor. Well, he knew how to do other things, but, not how to make a living. Wow, that sounds really bad. Well, it gets better from here. Pastor Mark, he took on odd jobs. He worked as a substitute teacher. He did landscaping. He stacked lumber at Knox Lumber. He helped a friend of ours start a business from scratch. He worked really hard. He actually told me, I will clean toilets if I have to put food on the table. No worries, honey. So though we went through somewhat of a crisis in terms of ministry, and we had some sort of identity crisis during those years, that crisis literally drew us closer to Jesus and trusting his ability and his desire to provide for us. I could go on and on about the miracles that happened during that season of our life. But we understood God to be our provider in ways that we had never understood before that. And we definitely did things we never imagined doing during that stage of our lives. And it was hard. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like, oh, we get up in the morning and what are you going to do today, God? It was hard, you know. But trusting God as provider refined us. And it prepared us for other situations that we had to face in life and that we will face in the future. So here we find that Jesus told them to do something different, the opposite of what he had told them to do before. And the disciples' reaction, they looked around at each other, and then their reply to him is in verse 38 there. Lord, look, here are 2 swords. And he said to them, it is enough. Well, awesome, 2 swords. But 2 swords, there was 12 of them there, right? Okay, so 2 swords isn't really going to do much against, you know, a whole bunch of attackers. And notice he didn't say that 2 swords were enough. He just said, it is enough. So that gives us insight into what was really happening there. It wasn't, he didn't tell them that they had to get a sword so that, that they would fight. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. But it is enough actually means it's enough talk. It's time to get on with what has to happen. He went on to say that it's time for things to get accomplished in me. Time for him to be numbered with the transgressors. It's enough. So that, like, they're talking about the swords that they never got to carry before, and now they have 2 swords. And he's like, it's enough. Let's get on with life. I got to go get some things done. So if we were to keep reading there, which we're not going to, but Jesus and his disciples went out to the Mount of Olives to pray. Well, some of them slept, as we know. Jesus went out to pray. They went out to take a nap. Wow, people, come on. So, are we tired today?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then this whole multitude, the Bible says this whole multitude of the enemy came with Judas leading the way. And Judas went right up to Jesus and did what? Kissed him.